You're listening to Big World Network.
Accidental Passion, Episode 3, Red Eye. Read by Meagan Hedin. Warning: although there is no material subject matter within that couldn't be found in any general bookstore with no age constraint, this series is rated 18 and contains adult situations and content. It is intended for mature audiences only and should not be read if you are uncomfortable with graphic sexual intimacy. Kim waited absently in line to reach the gate agent with her boarding pass, standing outside the jetway entrance in the terminal at Miami International Airport before she could board the red-eye flight back to Detroit. She had been preoccupied all evening with thoughts of Rick. Aside from that morning, everything had been perfect. They had even made love once more before she left for the airport. It had all been so incredible. But the events of that morning were still disturbing to her. Had she seen a side of him that he had kept hidden? What was behind his distant, angry, self-serving sex? He certainly never said anything about it, nor did she bring it up. His look haunted her. Everything had been perfect up until then, and aside from that single episode, remained perfect until they parted. But something was horribly wrong that morning. Was she destined never to find a healthy and intimate relationship in her life? She was suddenly feeling very lonely. By the time she made it to the entryway to the Boeing 737, she convinced herself that she was overreacting. She smiled at the male flight attendant who greeted her and moved down the aisle towards her row. It was already dark out, and she could see glimpses of all the activity and lights of baggage cars and service vehicles outside the windows. She truly hoped she could get some sleep on this flight. As Kim approached her aisle seat, she was relieved to see she wouldn't be sitting by a fidgeting child or obese, sweaty person, as usually seemed to be the case. Instead, there was an elderly man sitting by the window and a very attractive 30-something man with red hair in the middle seat. There was something very stunning and warm about him. She wasn't sure if it was his red hair or his deep blue eyes. She briefly greeted them both and settled into her seat. As the jet pushed back from the gate and they taxied out, the redhead, who introduced himself as Ryan, made small talk and seemed to be a very sincere and pleasant person. But she really just wanted to sleep before jumping back into reality and her real life. Very shortly after takeoff, a flight attendant came through the aisle with blankets and pillows. Both Kim and Ryan took them, and the lights were soon dimmed down so people could sleep for the several-hour flight. After a glass of wine, Kim covered her legs below her skirt and upper body up to her neck with the blue blanket, then adjusted the pillow, making herself as comfortable as possible. Her eyes had been closed and she was about to doze off. The noise of the jet, the gentle rocking from light turbulence, and the glass of wine all helping, when she felt Ryan reposition under his blanket and his hand lightly touched her thigh. She kept her eyes closed, not moving, wondering if he had fallen asleep or was even conscious he was touching her under the blankets. And then she felt his finger move. At first it was almost imperceptible, and she froze, trying to decide if it really had moved. After a moment, there was no doubt. She felt his finger just between the side slit of her skirt, very gently sliding back and forth in small little strokes. There was something so tender, so intimate about it. But yet he was a virtual stranger sitting next to her in a dark airplane. She wasn't sure what she should do. The connection was exactly what she needed. All the thoughts and stresses of her life and relationships going through her mind, and just feeling the touch of a stranger made her feel connected somehow. Kim wondered what was wrong with her that she hadn't moved or stopped him. At least she was asleep and at any time could wake up if she wanted to stop him. But for now, she was enjoying the connection and curious what would happen next. She didn't know why, but the touch of a near stranger helped her not feel so alone, being lost with her husband and scared of what she had with Rick and his recent actions. A random connection felt very right at the moment. It was crazy, she knew that. But here she was, pretending to be asleep while a man lightly, tenderly, ran his finger back and forth on her leg under the blanket. The jet hit a small pocket of turbulence, and his hand seemed to jump to the top of her leg through the slit in her skirt. Again, his fingers began caressing her leg, his entire hand now resting on top of it. And again, she froze, uncertain what to do. It felt so incredible, somehow even special. He had to know she was awake, even though her eyes were closed. Or maybe he didn't. Kim tried to steady her breathing, her entire body feeling alive. With her eyes closed, she was acutely aware of every sensation she was experiencing. As she debated how much longer she should let this go on before she pretended to wake up, his hand moved very rapidly and with purpose through the slit. When it came to a stop, his pinky finger was low enough to gently press against her panties between her legs. It took her breath away, and she tried to hide a small gasp while still pretending to be asleep. She missed her moment. If she was going to stop him, it had to have been then, because now, after she allowed his hand to rest there, it was a form of permission, she thought. There was no way if she opened her eyes now he would believe she had just woken up. But yet she remained with her eyes closed, appearing to be asleep. She knew why she hadn't instantly stopped him when his hand moved up. It was the pleasure, the intimacy, and sensations. The feeling that somehow, because she was asleep, she wasn't responsible for her actions. As his index finger gently slid under her panties at the crease of her inner leg, she knew there was no turning back now. No stopping it in a believable way that she had been unaware of what was going on. Nor did she want to open her eyes and take responsibility for what was happening and what she was enjoying so immensely. His finger found her and gently rubbed, and again she found herself desperately trying to control her breathing. By no means was it the first time she had ever been touched there, but never, ever in her entire life had she ever felt something so simple a sexual act as this resonate throughout her entire body and being. She knew it was wrong. She knew she was questioning the absurdity of it, the insanity of letting this stranger have such intimate access to her under the blanket, but she wanted more and struggled not to move into his hand and fingers as a sign of encouragement. Kim remained perfectly still. She was thankful for the noise of the jet, for it helped hide her quickening short breaths. She remained asleep, eyes closed, as he expertly found the right spots, rubbing and penetrating, no one around them even remotely aware as to the incredible lovemaking. Yes, lovemaking, she thought, under the blanket. His touch was so wonderful, so intimate, so personal. She felt as if there was spoken communication between them, transferred through his touch. Before she realized it, she was building towards a release, and as she did, she fought with all her being not to scream out in pleasure, but to remain perfectly still, eyes closed, asleep. She knew he could tell she had finished, and knew his fingers would be wet as he tenderly slid his hand out from her leg through the slit in her skirt. Desperately trying to control her breathing and let it settle down to a normal level, Kim was eventually able to actually fall asleep after the incredible release she had just experienced. She awoke with the landing gear touching the ground. As she walked up to the jetway to the terminal, feeling the cold Detroit air, she felt Ryan come up beside her and slide his hand inside of hers, leaving a business card. She was too embarrassed to look at him, too surprised at herself, but she did give his hand a gentle squeeze. It was, after all, one of the most intimate experiences of her life, which was remarkable considering it was just simple touching. Kim took a deep breath. After a crazy weekend, she knew that it was time to step back into her regular life and become, once again, the person she had left when she first boarded a jet 2 days ago.
This has been a presentation of Big World Network. Visit us on BigWorldNetwork.com for more free weekly series, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to Big World Network.